way to the Confederacy's new capital in Montgomery to offer our service. Although I desired a commission with the cavalry, they had other means and use for me as an arms and munitions officer in Lynchburg, Virginia. From there, I was called upon by General Joseph E. Johnson to accompany him to Harper's Ferry to help train the new recruits into artillerymen. I and the Arbutus Battery in July of 1861 then accompanied General Joseph E. Johnson and General Thomas Stonewall Jackson to Manassas, Virginia, where the battery and I played a key role in the defeat of the Union forces at this first major battle of the war between the states. In the following fall, I was promoted to captain, so I could organize my own mobile horse artillery unit underneath direct command of General Jeb Stuart. And by the summer of 1862, I was promoted to major of General Jeb Stuart's mobile horse artillery unit. I fought in every military engagement of his, all the way from the Battle of Bull Run to Kelly's Ford, Virginia. But one of my most memorable engagements with the enemy would have been in Fredericksburg in December of 1862. Several of my men and I, with 2 artillery pieces, were given the permission to move out well in advance of the main Confederate line and to engage the enemy there, the Union. We lost one of our artillery pieces almost immediately, but we still commenced firing with one of the cannons that we had. But we did not fire in the normal fashion at the Army, the Union, with canister shots and grape shot, but with solid shot instead. We flanked them, and there were several thousand Union that we engaged. One of the carriers from General Jeb Stuart sent word to us to fall back, not only once, not only twice, but thrice, until we ran out of sufficient beams of ammunition and men, and we went back to the main Confederate line after 2.5 hours of heavy engagement with the enemy. But because of this engagement with the enemy, it stalled the Union forces for nearly 2.5 hours. That gave the Confederate main line enough time to entrench and repel a vicious attack from the Union. I was nicknamed the Gallant Fool that day for those actions on the field. But let me tell you about war in a letter that I wrote to a relative of mine after the first Battle of Bull Run. I've seen what romancers call glorious war. I've seen it in all its phases. I've heard the booming of cannon and the more deadly rattle of musketry at a distance. I've seen it all nearby and have been under its destructive showers. I've seen men and horses fall thick and flat around me. I've seen our own men, bloody and frightened and flying before the enemy. I've seen our own men bravely charge the enemy's lines and heard the shout of triumph as they carried their position. I've heard the agonizing shrieks, the wounded, the dying. I've passed over the battlefield and have seen the mangled forms of men and horses in frightful abundance, men without heads, without arms, others without legs. All this I have witnessed and more, till my heart sickens. And war is not glorious, as novelists would have us believe. It is only when we are in the heat and the flush of the battle that it becomes fascinating and interesting. It is only then that we enjoy it. When we forget ourselves and revel in the destruction that we are dealing around us, I am now ashamed of those feelings I had in those hours of danger. The whistling bullets and shells were music to me. I gloried in it. It delighted and fascinated me. I feared not death in any form. But when the battle was won, and I visited the field, change came over me. To see the horrors of war, but it was necessary. We are battling for our rights and our homes. Ours is a just war, a holy cause. The invader must meet the fate that he deserves, and we must meet him as becomes us, as becomes men. As President Davis said several months ago, the small mound of earth marks the place where the invader fell. March 17th of 1863, Kelly's Ford, Virginia. My men were stationed there. When I was off in Culpeper, Virginia, just a few miles away, when I received word of surprise Union attack on my cavalry forces back in Kelly's Ford, I found and borrowed a horse and rode out to the aid of my troops. After crossing the Rappahannock by bridge, a Union artillery shell exploded nearby, embedding its fragments into the back of my skull. I tumbled from my horse, being thought for dead. My men recovered me after the battle and found that I was not dead, but unconscious, and brought me to the aid of the doctors back in Culpeper, Virginia, where the doctors there worked on me vigorously for hours, but unfortunately, to no avail. In the early morning hours of March 18th, 1863, I had passed on as Major John Pelham, the gallant Pelham, of General Jeb Stuart's Mobile Horse Artillery Unit of the Army of Northern Virginia at age 24. Sorrow swelled throughout the Confederacy. General Jeb Stuart said of my death that I was an irreparable loss to the Confederacy, and General Lee referred to me as the gallant Pelham. My funeral was set for March 31st, 1863 in Jacksonville, Alabama. My mortal remains, then being transported by train, stopped and made several visitations along the way back to Alabama. But there was a certain man that General Robert E. Lee appointed to the honor guard that accompanied my mortal remains. His name is Charles Bush. His master, Thomas Bush, served in the Confederacy and died in action, and Charles Bush was with him. And at a point in history, he found those personal belongings of Thomas Bush, his master, and brought him back to the family. At another point in history, Charles Bush took it upon himself to joining the Confederate Home Guard. After hearing word of my passing, General Robert E. Lee appointed him as part of the honor guard to accompany my mortal remains. But he took it a step further and found my personal belongings, being saddlebags and a pistol, to bring back home to the family. The Jacksonville Republican newspaper said of the day of March 31st, 1863, that it was a rather bright, sunny, and spring day, and the largest gathering of people ever before seen in Jacksonville. At attendance at my graveside were friends and family, teachers and students from both the male and female academy, the Calhoun County Grand Jury, and CSA officers. When they lowered my mortal remains into their final resting place, the school children filled my grave with white lilac blossoms. Upon my headstone, you'll see the words say, "How shall we rank thee upon glory's page, more than children?" Thank you. To add a brief word, not long ago, be the June of this year, it'd be 5 years ago, that BLM and other activist groups like For Better Jacksonville came here to Jacksonville, given there was vandalism that took place on many of the graves here and on the square. Well, unlike those groups, we're about preserving history and putting up monuments and dedication and all those things, and thanks to the work like Quinton and others to preserving that history. So just a reminder, so thank you very much.
That was such a great job. Well, it's always a pleasure to listen to Peter present. I definitely agree. That's what everybody that's standing out here today is for preserving. At this time, I would like to talk a little bit about how this project originated. I've always grew up really inspired by John Pelham. Literally, the first book I ever read about the Civil War was actually about John Pelham. So I kind of might be a little bit biased in that aspect. It kind of struck me, and this is one reason why I've always really liked the Civil War. But I was down in Anniston one day, and I was looking in some books with talking about the John H. Forney UDC chapter that was here in Jacksonville. And it listed all the accomplishments that they had done here in Jacksonville with putting up markers and other monuments and so forth. And there was 2 plaques that were in the text of that book that I had no clue where they were. I never had heard of them. And one of them was talking about John Pelham's funeral, and it said at the First Baptist Church. So I reached out to Mr. Norman Dassinger Jr. And I said, "Have you ever heard about this marker?" He said, "I didn't know at the time." And eventually he found out that his mother had brought it up to the National Confederate Museum up in Elm Spring and Middle Tennessee. And talking back and forth with the members that preside over the museum up there, I asked them if we could bring it back to Jacksonville. I thought it would be a great project to see the marker come back to where it originally sat, although the First Baptist Church doesn't exist no more, unfortunately. Just a little bit about that church. The First Baptist Church, which you'll see a picture on the marker whenever we unveil it here shortly, it's set probably about 300 yards north of us. On Church Avenue, as you make your way northward, you'll see Fire Station number 2. That's where the First Baptist Church originally set. It was built in 1857, and in the 1960s, the state of Alabama had some grants where they were bringing churches closer to college campuses, and the First Baptist Church really stepped into that program to get a new church. And with the stipulation of this was the church had to either be, it couldn't be used as a church building no more. So in the 1960s, they dismantled it until it was no longer there. And it's really sad to me that out of all of the historic churches that we have in Jacksonville, the only one that John Pelham's funeral was held in is the only one that is no longer there today. But after talking with Mr. Southerner up at Elm Springs, I was successful working with the UDC chapter. They signed a letter, and I brought that up there, and I got this plaque. And one of the big issues was, well, where do we put it at? The church is no longer there. So there were several places that I had picked, but whenever I tell you about this project, about jumping through loops, this was one of the hardest things I've probably ever had to do. And I want to thank everybody that donated to the project, for one thing. Since the plaque did not have a marker, the original marker was one of the foundation stones of the original courthouse that's set on the square today. It was gone. So after raising $800 from many of you that are here present today, we was able to get a nice marker to attach this plaque and pay respect to John Pelham and his sacrifice that he gave for the Confederacy. But after talking with the city officials in Jacksonville, I was very fortunate, and one reason I think that this marker stands here today in the Jacksonville City Cemetery is because of Pete Pelham and I don't know where Tom is. Oh, Tom Pelham. I had to get a document signed approving that they could put this marker right here next to the Pelham plaque. And I remember whenever I laid it down on the desk and they said that you're good to go, and I was happy. I was saying hallelujah. I'm glad that we're finally going to get this thing placed. And I'm very thankful to see so many people out here today. This is such a great time. We have great weather. And at this time, if you would like to, we're going to make our way down here to the marker. And something else I wanted to note. Why did I choose this date? It's because 90 years ago, on April the 26th, 1935, that plaque was originally erected and dedicated at the First Baptist Church at 4 o'clock. And that's all in the newspaper from Jacksonville. So I thought it would be very fitting to do it on the exact date and time. So if you would like to, we're going to make our way down here, and Pete and Tom are going to unveil this beautiful marker and plaque that's remembering their ancestor, John Pelham.
Hey, wait a minute. I'd like to thank Quinton Kirk. You know, young people nowadays, they have short memories, and they taught things that may not actually be true. I don't want to get political with you, but Quinton has really taken our history, which is my history, Confederate history in general, and Pelham in particular, to heart, and he's done something. He's not just talked it, he's walked it. I appreciate that. Miranda does. Thank you so much.
This is also better memorial day than St. John Baptist Day. They were doing this.
I totally forgot about that. So thank you for noting that, Mr. Dassing. It's actually Confederate Memorial Day. That's what Mr. Dassing had commented.